Sherry and I went through infertility for about 5 years, 5 or 6 years, various treatments, and at the end of that, Sherry did eventually become pregnant with twin girls, and had a very healthy pregnancy. Had a great pregnancy, carried them well, and
they started to notice that Maisie was not growing at the same level that Effie was. And so then they explained to us that Maisie's weight they needed to watch it closely because it looked like her weight was kind of falling off or plateauing, and that Effie just kept getting bigger, and that we might have to start talking about delivering earlier, like having a planned delivery. And then they told us very early on that Effie was breech, and we would just watch for that all along to see if maybe she would right herself. They were hoping she'd right herself and that she'd be head first by the time I needed to deliver, but that never happened. She stayed feet first the whole time.
Yeah, we made the decision, right? Like that we definitely wanted to be in the operating room. If anything went wrong, we were where we were supposed to be, and that, that felt safe, right? Like, okay, like, y'all think it can happen this way, and we'll be in an operating room. Sherry will have the epidural, like, we'll be right there. Like, this is what hospitals are for. Vaginal birth of Maisie, and then of Effie. And I think the birth of Maisie went pretty smoothly, truth be told. It was the first one I've seen, so I don't have a point of reference there. But it seemed to go really well. I think Sherry was exhausted, but then there was a long period between that birth and the second birth. At some point, it became clear that there was stress in the room, and more medical personnel began to come in the room, and it was kind of at that point that I was like, what's happening? And yeah, she was born, she was out, to probably the waist ish, and she kind of began to turn kind of bluish colors. She was very slippery. He was having trouble getting a grip on her. He began to pull very violently. Sherry sort of, at that point, kind of whimpered and just, I don't know, nobody knew what was happening. We certainly didn't know what was happening. And I saw them doing what looked like CPR. They yelled a couple times for epinephrine. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? What has happened? I kept asking the doctor, what happened? Like, what happened? And he wouldn't answer me. At some point he looked up and he just said, I'm sorry. And then the ICU doctor came over and told me they couldn't revive her, told me to come over and see her. The pain never goes away. I still never saw her eyes. I never saw what her eyes looked like. I wake up every night, wonder what color her eyes were. After all of this happened, right, the doctor saying to us that he'd read about things like this happening, but had never seen it. And I thought, well, what do you think the point of it being in a book was? Like, this is a thing that happens. The C-section could have been called at so many points so much earlier, and even averted bad decision-making on the front end. But I think instead bad decision-making was just exponentially made worse by failing to make the final decision. But anyone making that final decision, right? In a hospital full of professionals, no one made that decision until it was far, far too late for us to have a chance to take our daughter home. They had no structure there to support us or help us, and certainly not to take responsibility. They sent, after we complained about things, they sent they sent risk management staff to our room. And I was like, what, why are y'all here? Like, I don't understand. Like, are y'all trained grief counselors? Like, what is going on? And I mean, I think that was the first sort of flag to us that like these people do not have our interests in mind, right? If your top concern right now is managing risk, it's not my well-being, it's not my family's well-being.
They couldn't provide us anything, right? There was no social worker available. I was able to nurse Maisie that first time, but after everything happened, I wasn't producing any milk. So I needed a lactation specialist. There was no lactation specialist. None of those things could be found or available. They kept saying it was because it was the Labor weekend, but they were able to send somebody with the bill. I know Ezra described Effie's birth and just the amount of pulling and just how the doctor couldn't get a good grip on Effie. I think I remember at one point he had a towel trying to grip her. All of this was happening inside of me. And so when women oftentimes tear during delivery, the worst is a 4th-degree tear. And I had something much worse than that. So they don't even have a number for what I had. New Mexico has a cap on medical malpractice. And so they wanted to say that only one cap applied. So that it was one incident and one cap applied, and it didn't matter that 2 people were injured, that one person lost their life and another person has lifelong injuries.